My brew. My strainer. Good day. Hello. Hi, everyone. I'm just putting together my morning brew, and we're going to just chat about personal experiences with egregores. So, if you need to grab your drink, your snack, your notebook, and your pen, please do so. While I put together my morning brew here. There's this, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Tochi. Hi, Miss Ife. Mama of the men's and the women's. And you can always get me through my website at tochi.us or drtochi.com. And today we're going to talk about personal. Thank you, Sabs. Thank you very much. Actually, if you go on TikTok, I'm live on TikTok. I look a lot better on TikTok because TikTok has this filter where it smooths out all these imperfections on my face. So if you see me looking over this way a lot, it's because of TikTok. I look better on TikTok. you know, even spiritual practitioners can be vain. Thank you, Natalie. Even spiritual practitioners can be vain. Okay, so don't judge me. Okay, do not judge me. So if you see me looking over this way most of the time, is because I look a lot better on TikTok. Anywho, please remember to give the class a thumbs up. That lets the algorithm know that class has started, and it also notifies other people, especially those who have their notifications on, that class we are in session. Okay. I'm having a busy September. I hope you're having a busy September and that it's busy for all the right reasons. Okay. So, what I decided to do for December is like any opportunity I have, I will just hop on to teach classes because there are periods of time. Like, remember that happened in August. There were large periods of time when I was just away because I was busy. We had a lot of rituals last month. We're going to have a few for this month, but last month was really, 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 really busy for rituals and things of that nature. Okay, so if you need me for your divinations and consultations, dream interpretations, and spiritual practice coaching, please go to my website at drtochi.com or tochi.us. I have to think about what's my website for a minute. Sometimes you get an autopilot. So today we're going to talk about personal experiences with egregores. So if you have had a personal experience with egregores, um, we in class would certainly love to hear your experience. Okay. Thank you, Miss Ife. Hello, Miss Allen. Okay. Just a quick reminder, we will be having um, some water rituals this month. I believe the last week of September. and also a meet and greet. And then also our spiritual fast and cleanse will be starting in 3 days. Okay. If you want to set up a scholarship for someone else to go, please send me an email. Okay, because there's sometimes people are like, hey, I can't attend, but I would like to provide the opportunity for someone else to attend. So if that's the case, send me an email. Okay, and we will make that happen. There are people who are from the global south or developing nations who frankly can't afford to pay for some of our events because they're in US dollars. Okay. And so sometimes I will offer scholarships, and sometimes people will offer scholarships. So if you feel led to provide someone else with the opportunity to attend one of my retreats, please send me an email. Okay. We will be conducting this retreat for 10 days. We're going to be fasting, we're going to be cleansing, and we're going to be creating and developing our own spiritual practices. And those who have already signed up already got information on how they have to start preparing. They started preparing last week. So they started getting their diet in order and other things in order just to be ready for the retreat starting in about 3 days. They'll be starting on Sunday. Okay. So, and if you want to participate in the retreat, send me an email as well. Okay. I just want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to be guided by a spiritual practitioner. Because one of the big things that comes up in questions is, how do I start? What do I do? And it's very difficult trying to pin things together by yourself by just watching multiple videos. And also, just a heads up, we do have construction going on in the house. So, if they need my attention, they will come and get me. So, just want to let you know that ahead of time. You know, they will come and get my attention, so I might have to step up or step away if they call me for that. But it won't be for long, maybe just to answer a couple of questions and continue. Okay. If you do have the opportunity to attend this retreat with me, I will encourage you to do so, frankly. Okay. Because not only will I be facilitating it, but I'll also be participating in it. Okay. I will be participating myself in it. And some of the retreats that I do now are retreats that I wish that people would organize, that I could attend, because when you are attending a retreat facilitated by somebody else, then you're not so worried about making sure everything goes right and people are not fighting each other or people are not getting off track. You can just focus on yourself. And people used to do these things years ago. Okay, people used to organize these kinds of events years ago. And for some reason, it just looked like it disappeared. I don't know if people just stopped being interested in their health and their spirituality. So I don't know, um, really what happened. Um, but it used to be very common back in the day. People would have these conferences or workshops or retreats, detoxing, teaching about nutrition, spirituality, and I don't know what happened. People just stopped, doing that, or maybe I'm not where it's happening. Okay. So, anywho, Some of you know that we have been teaching on the Jesus egregor and the effects of the Jesus egregor and how to recognize the effects of the Jesus egregor in our lives and in the lives of others. Okay. Can you hear me all right? Can you hear me? Oh, man. Oh, my spoon is. Here's a quick tip. And I learned this from somebody. Um, I learned this from a gentleman, which I thought was really, when he said it to me at the time, I thought it was kind of weird. But when I started trying it, I found it very interesting. He said that when he drinks his coffee with a pinch of salt. And I remember when he said that he drinks his coffee with a pinch of salt, I would say, why would you drink your coffee with a pinch of salt? And he said that's how he grew up in their family. Whenever you made coffee, you would add a pinch, not a spoon, but a pinch of salt to the coffee. Okay. So, right now, what I'm having, for those of you who might be curious, I am having some French chicory. Here it is. I don't know if you see that. That's a French chicory, and it's like a root. I hope you saw it on the picture. Okay, there's a picture here, so I don't know if you see that. So that's French chicory. Okay, and this is what some restaurants like McDonald's will do to save the cost of making actual coffee. So instead of having 100% coffee, they will actually make it maybe 50% coffee and 50% sugar. Okay. So it has no caffeine in it, but it does look like coffee. Like, see what it looks like? It's like dark like coffee. Do you see that? I'm looking for the camera. There. Okay. So hopefully you should see that. So it looks like coffee. It tastes like coffee. It smells like coffee, but it's not coffee, and it has no caffeine in it. And so, if a restaurant wants to cut down on their costs of making coffee, they will use this, and they will cut the coffee, mix it with this. But what this also does, it gives a coffee a smooth taste, so it's not very acidic. Okay. And you can drink this by yourself. So let's say you're used to drinking coffee, you like your coffee, but you're trying to get away from the caffeine in the coffee. You can substitute with this. And no coffee substitutes, a whole bunch of no coffee substitutes actually will use this as part of their no coffee substitute. So what I did was I actually have here some mushroom. Let me show you that on TikTok. Mushroom instant tea. I'm just hoping this will focus. And then let me put it here. Mushroom instant tea. Okay. And so this one has caffeine in it. So I put it here and put some chicory in it. And then I don't know if you saw me a few minutes ago filter that whole thing. And then what I did was I added a pinch of Himalayan salt. Okay, Himalayan pink salt. I think it's Himalayan salt. I hope it's from the Himalayas. Anyway, it's made in Pakistan. It's supposed to be Himalayan pink salt. So, And then I also added a pinch of magnesium in it. And take that like first thing in the morning. Okay. And you will find out that this will help very much with your hydration because caffeine can be dehydrating. So when you put together, and again, when I'm talking about a pinch of salt, I'm not talking about a heaping pinch. Just like whatever will fit here, whatever is captured here. That's what I would fling in there, and it actually gives the coffee and or your drink an interesting taste. So, and I wouldn't recommend doing this with table salt or refined salt. I would recommend Celtic salt, raw sea salt, Himalayan pink salt. Salt that still has its trace minerals in it, and it's great if you suffer from cramps. You know, I found it helps with cramps, like leg cramps, muscle cramps. I found it to be helpful. So I was like, hey, good day, Empress Zana. So this is something you can try. Um, you know, it's something you can try. Okay, so personal experiences with egregores. Remember when we were talking about egregores, we defined what an egregor is? It is an entity that is created by a group of occultists and metaphysicians. Okay. And oh, I wanted to mention something before I hop into this topic totally. This morning on Instagram, I saw a young lady. Um, she did a TikTok video on this Jesus egregore. And I listened to it and I was like, good. The message is being spread. So I was quite pleased. Um, even though her video was a lot flashier than mine, but that's okay as long as the message is going out. I was quite pleased with it, that at least the younger people, um, I was pleased that the younger people are being made aware of, some of these spiritual and psychic systems that we're working under, in this world. So, remember when I started teaching about the Jesus egregore, I said that Jesus, the way that Jesus is worshipped now, is not the only um, egregore out there. The mushroom coffee is just like the chicory. I put a dash of cinnamon. I learned this in Japan when I was there. Very good. I tried yours also, but love the mushroom coffee. I tried the mushroom coffee and maybe I didn't get a good one. But this one I think I got this from HEB or Whole Foods. Simple Truth. Okay, Simple Truth brand. So I bought a small one. Yeah. So remember I was saying that when we look at systems of egregores, it's not just the Jesus egregore that is out there. Okay. There are many people who are venerating what they think are spirit guides, but in actual fact, what they're venerating are egregores. Okay, they're not. They're not. They're not even aware, and they think that they're actually venerating or worshiping or working with spirit guides because they are getting results, but they don't realize that they're not working with the real deal. They're just working with an egregore, and so people would say, well, how can you tell the difference between an egregore and the real deal? And that can be difficult because remember in the last class we talked about the Jesus egregore, and the apparitions of Jesus. So you have people coming out and saying, I saw Jesus with my eyes. I touched, I heard, I spoke with Jesus. And, they're very, very convinced that it was Jesus they were talking with. They're very convinced that it was Jesus they were talking to. And there's nothing you're going to say or do to convince them otherwise that that's who they were talking to. But one thing, there are a number of ways I believe that you can tell the difference between um, whether you're working with an egregor or whether you're working with a spur guide. Okay. An egregor is constantly demanding for energy. It's constantly give. Okay. And its power depends on the group. Its power depends on the group. So the more people in the group, the more powerful the egregor becomes. Okay. When we talk of spirit guides and when we talk about deities, these are spiritual entities that already exist, already have their spiritual functions, and don't depend on human giving for their existence because they have a function, they have a divine function that they were sent here to accomplish. Okay. So let's say you have a deity that is responsible for some aspect of creation. It already comes with the energy it needs to execute that creation. Okay. If you have a deity that comes to provide knowledge, to provide information, it already comes with the energy that it needs to do that. Okay. Also, remember that in my other classes, I did mention that our dealings with spirit guides are transactional. You give them something, they give you something. Okay. So there's this balance of give and take that happens with spirit guides. However, when it comes to egregores, we tend to find out that their energy consumption tends to be excessive. Yes, thank you for sharing the video and thank you for reminding me. Please take a moment to share the video and let other people know that we are in class. And I appreciate the thumbs up that encourages me to put out more material like this. So thank you very much for that reminder and thank you for sharing the live. So when you are working, let me just use this broad term and say something. If you're working with something and it keeps on demanding more and more and more, and you are struggling to keep up with it, chances are you're working with an egregor and not the real deal. And I want to say this because there are some of us, especially those who are uh, Latino, okay, the Latinos, the Latinas, who work with, okay, let me put it this way. I have some students and clients who are Latina, and there was this interesting phenomena they described to me working with Santa Muerte. And their descriptions of their relationships with Santa Muerte was concerning to me because they saw um, her, that deity, good evening, IG, as a punitive and demanding deity. So you would hear them say things like, oh, she's always punishing me. You know, I expect her to punish me. Oh, this, and I would say, well, what is the nature of these so-called punishments? Oh, I got into an auto accident, or I lost something, or I sliced myself, or and it's one mishap after another, and they say, oh no, I know it's her, and she brings these trials and calamities to me because she needs my attention. And I found that very interesting, because if you have a beneficial relationship with your spirit guide, or whatever spirit guide or deity it is, it shouldn't be punishing you. Okay? It should be beneficial to you. And so when you are operating in a state of fear, okay, let me see what's going on with this. Okay. So when you're operating in a state of fear, okay, with whoever it is you're working with, even if you say, okay, I'm worshiping God, but your relationship with that God is that based on fear, then you need to know that you're not worshiping a God, you're worshiping an egregor. And remember the class we had on Sunday, we understood, and even in the mini classes I put out, check the platform where you're. I have many classes on the Jesus egregor. When that egregor senses that its existence is being threatened, that it's not getting enough energy, because remember, egregores depend on energy in order to survive. If there's no energy, they can't survive. Okay. So when they sense that their energy supply is going down, strong egregores will start doing things to ensure their longevity and ensure that their supply of energy doesn't go down. In fact, they will do things to increase their supply of energy. You will have people having nightmares. You will have people seeing visions and having apparitions and all kinds of strange things. The egregore will start acting like a dictator. It might, depending on how the person is connected to this egregore, it might start manifesting in their dreams. Okay. The egregore might start influencing other people to come and start talking to the person and start saying, oh, you are backsliding, you are not doing what you're supposed to do, oh, you. And then the person starts feeling guilty. And this is why when people leave certain religions, okay, they feel guilty. They feel guilty. Even when there are people, for instance, let me even put it this way. There are people who would leave a religion like Christianity, join a traditional religion. Let's say they went and joined Santeria or they joined Ifa, and things are not going well for them in Ifa. They would find that they would have people come to preach to them and say, yes, the reason why things are not working out for you is because you were a backslider and you left Christianity, and that's why things are not going well for you. And then they will return to Christianity. They will leave the Ifa, they will leave the Santeria, or leave whatever traditional religion they found and return to Christianity. And what they don't realize is that that was the action of the egregor. And that prior to them joining Ifa, they were connected to a very powerful egregor, very powerful Jesus egregor. And remember when we started this series, we were saying there are hundreds of Jesus egregores out there. So the fact you have a whole bunch of people screaming Jesus, Jesus, Jesus doesn't mean that they're worshiping the same Jesus. You can have people in the same church worshiping different Jesuses. And sometimes the leaders of the church know it, and sometimes they don't know it. And a lot of times, the congregation, they don't know it. And this is the reason why some people will go to that church and things work out for them. And other people are going to that same church and things are not working out for them. It depends on how well you are tapped into that Jesus egregor at that church. There are some churches out there that have Jesus on there, but the egregor they're working with has nothing to do with Jesus. And so if you have somebody who is like, no, I'm a Jesus person, they will go to that church and not get results. But if you go to that church and you're able to tap into the egregor that is operational in that church, you will get results. And remember, I mentioned this. That's why in some churches you will see the leader of the church, whether it's the pastor or the whoever, whatever title they call themselves, they'll be having you repeat certain names and certain phrases. And those are the trigger words or trigger phrases that activates the egregor. Okay. So the other thing that people don't realize is that it doesn't matter where you are, whether you're in a church, in a traditional religion, whether you're in a mosque, whether you're a Muslim, whether you're a Hindu, a Buddhist, or whatever. In life, you will always have problems. So the fact that you switch from one religion to other will not solve the problem. What solves the problem is your ability to connect to the solution and to connect to helpers who will help you solve the problem. So let's say, for instance, you're a member of a church, and that church is not a very supportive church. So all they're interested in is in your, that church is only interested um, in your contributions. Okay. And after a while, you get tired of that. And you're like, you know what? I no longer want to be a Christian. I'm going to be a Muslim. So you abandon the church and you join a mosque. You recite the Shahada and you become a Muslim. But then you have the good luck of joining a very supportive mosque, a supportive Islamic community. Okay. Now, what happens? Your experience of Islam becomes very beautiful. And you will say, aha, I was in the wrong place before, and now I'm in the right place because I now have people who are genuinely interested in me and interested in my welfare. So when problems come to you as a Muslim in that mosque, at that particular mosque, as a member of that mosque, you always have a solution. You always have helpers. So your experience of Islam becomes beautiful. But there are some people who will leave Christianity and become Muslims, and they don't have the good fortune of joining a good mosque. And so when they go there, they meet conditions that are equal to or worse than what they had, okay, in their church. And they will say, oh, this is not working for me. And maybe they tell somebody, maybe their former Christian associates, and they will say, guess what? I became a Muslim and my situation has not improved. And the friend will say, why don't you come back to Christianity? Let me take you to another church where there are miracles. And then the person switches again. But they don't realize that the reason why it's looking like they're not getting solutions is because they're not tapped into the solution providers. If you are going to be working with an egregor, and remember I said this before, let me say it again. If you're going to be working with an egregor, work with it consciously. Work with an egregor that solves your problems. My job here is not to condemn people's belief systems. And those of you who have followed me for years already know this. My job is not to condemn people's belief systems. My job is to practicalize your belief system. If you are determined, I have to be mindful of these platforms. So, if you are determined that you are going to get your solutions through Jesus, come hell or high water, okay? Find the Jesus egregor that will help you. If you go to one church and you're there and they're wasting your time, find another church. I'm saying this to those of you who are like, is Jesus or nothing? It doesn't make sense to remain in a church or temple or mosque or whatever where your suffering is multiplied, where your suffering is unattended to. It doesn't make sense. If you're a Muslim and you're attending a mosque where you're not being supported, you have problems and nobody wants to help you, you're not getting counsel, practical counsel, you're not being taught life skills, things that make you wealthy, I'm giving you permission to get up from there, go find another mosque. If Islam is your thing and you're saying it's Islam or nothing, you have a right to go tap into an egregor that works for you. And the reason why I'm saying it this way, I know it sounds controversial, but remember, this is where we get our forbidden fruit. Okay. I have come to understand that there are people who will never leave their religion, even though they are suffering. They will never leave it. Even though it's blatant and clear to them that what they are doing, where they are, is not solving their problems, they will say, you know what? I am too old, I'm too tired, I'm too sick, I'm too, put in the adjective there, to go looking for something else to believe in. So let me just stay here with what I already know. And you can argue with them, try to convince them, try to do all kinds of things just to get them to see the light, but they will cover their eyes. And they will say to you, leave me where I am. Y'all can go do the things you need to do, get the help you need to get, and so on and so on and so forth. But I'm just going to stay here because it's too late for me. It's too late for me to change. And they're suffering, and there's no end to their suffering. And they're like, you know what? I'm just okay. I'm just going to stay here until my time is up. Okay. So, the best thing for such people, since that's the hill they're willing to die on, is to find a hill worth dying on. If I'm going to be working with egregores, if for instance, if I say I want to work with a Jesus egregore, I will not be self-deceiving to say I'm working with Jesus the man, Jesus the historical man. I should have enough wisdom to say, I understand I'm working with an egregore. So my job is to find the egregore that will help me in my life. And this is what I love about the younger people now, the Gen Zs, the Gen Alphas, the Gen AO, always on, even some of the millennials. What I love about these younger generations is that they will go wherever at the drop of a hat. They're not going to stay there and argue with you. They're not going to stay there and try to figure it out with you. They will just drop it and drop it like it's hot and move on. If one thing is not working, they're not going to stay there. That's why, like a lot of workplaces now, some of you might remember when I told the story, some places that I had applied for jobs when I was working as an engineer many years ago, some of them are digging through their databases of resumes and CVs, and they're sending out um, invitations to apply for the jobs they have now. And I think that whoever is running their HR departments must be out of their minds. If I sent you an application 25, 30 years ago, what makes you think that I want to come and work for you now? 30 years later, 20 years later. I sent you my application 20 years ago, and you're reaching out to me saying, hey, we have this senior engineer opportunity available. What makes you think that 20 years later, I am still available and interested? But why is this happening? Because you have a lot of these young people, they're not willing to tolerate what our generations tolerated. They're not. They're not going to sit there and take your office politics and and the favoritism and the and nepotism, and they're not interested. Most Gen Z people are out there with multiple streams of income. If this is not working, the other will. I can't tell you how many people I know who have studied, they were STEM, science, technology, engineering. Uh, what was the M for? Mathematics or medicine or whatever the M is for. Okay. And they are running very successful businesses unrelated to STEM. Many of them are own restaurants. Many of them are fashion designers, interior designers, decorators, event planners, social media managers. Many of them are social media influencers. So they're not like us. So if they are following somebody, excuse me, and that person is not working for them, they will drop you and go to someone else until they find something that resonates with them. And I think a lot of us can learn from that. If your religion is not improving your life, if your religion is not teaching you how to create wealth, you need to be honest with yourself and say, is this where I need to be? Because there are many people of my generation and older generations who are suffering financially, suffering psychologically, suffering physically, suffering all kinds of different ways. But we're like, no, I'm gonna stick with my church here. And every day you go to that church, it's one scandal or another, one conflict or another. Who said what to whom and how it was said, and who did what to whom and how it was done. And we're not moving forward, and our lives are not being improved. So again, we recognize egregores by their energy consumption. Look at it this way. When you plug in a microwave and you go look at your electricity meter, you will notice that the numbers are going by very quickly. It shows you that you're consuming a lot of electricity. When you plug in your fridge, the numbers don't move as quickly. But many people think that, oh, because the fridge is bigger than the microwave, that the fridge is pulling more electricity compared to the microwave. No, the microwave, even though it's smaller than the fridge, pulls more electricity than the fridge. Okay. And so if you are doing your religious practices or what you think are spiritual practices and it is draining you, and you are in a state of anxiety, you are in a state of fear, you're in a state of worry, you are in a state of God knows what, you are serving an egregore. It's very likely that you are serving an egregore. Okay. And you need to be aware of that. And you need to decide what you're going to do about that. Okay? Egregores are not defined by religion. Okay? Some people think, oh, okay, it's only the Christians that have the egregores. Dr. Tochi was teaching on egregores, Jesus egregor. I guess it's only the Christians who have egregores. No, even Muslims have egregores. There are some Muslims who are in the mosque serving an Allah egregor, thinking that they're serving Allah. And in their mind, they're like, no, I'm coming here, I'm praying to Allah. But what's going on inside their mosque has nothing to do. They're working with an egregor. Thank you for the like. And you'll see them, they'll carry their Quran, they'll be quoting their Quran, but they don't know that that mosque that they're going to, that particular mosque they're going to, they're working with an egregor. And the egregor in there has been named Allah. And how do you know? When you have that energy draining, you're in a state of fear, you're in a state of anxiety, you're in a state of worry, you know, dread, you don't know, nothing is certain. And you're constantly fasting and praying and fasting and praying and fasting and praying and praying and crying and fasting and praying. And it's consuming your mind. You're working with an egregor. When people are working with deities, actual deities, actual spirit guides, actual spirit, the experiences are quite different. Okay? Because the relationship is easy and the results are quickly evident. Let's say, for instance, that you are a voodoo devotee, okay, and you're working with a certain law. So you wake up in the morning, you make your morning invocations. Good evening. You make your morning offerings. It's morning over or early afternoon over here, so I would say good afternoon to you. Okay. You're welcome, Miss Perpetua. Hi, Chrissy. And you make your morning offerings, you pour your libations, you state your intentions for the day, you make your invocations for the day, you ask for help for the day, and then you go about your day. You're met with a challenge for that day, and you call upon your spirit guide or spiritual crew, and you say to them, hey, look at the challenge I'm meeting here. Okay, help me through this challenge that I'm facing. And before the end of the day, that challenge has been taken care of, or at least you have an indication that it will be taken care of. And you're having good things come to you, and good things and happy things coming your way. So you say, okay, the law that I'm working with is beneficial to me, most likely as a deity. Because the deity will not demand of you that which will exterminate you. The spirit guide will not demand of you that which will put you in trouble. It will not. Because if that spirit guide is here to help you, it's not going to put you in a situation that makes it impossible for you to be helped. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying here. If you're working with a spirit guide, and this spirit guide knows that part of its function is to help you, does it make sense for that spirit guide to make things so difficult for you that you are unable to give it what it needs to help you? The spirit guide doesn't depend only on your energy input. It will help you in a transactional sense. Yes, you pour a libation, you make an offering, and you say, okay, I am pouring you this libation. I'm making you this offering because I need help with this specific thing. But your libations and offerings, your invocations will not be to the extent that debilitates you or puts you in danger or puts you in trouble, or you understand what I mean? Because the spirit guide knows its function. It's here to help you. Okay? But when we talk about an egregor that was created by human beings, the egregor, yes, will perform the tasks, specific tasks for which it was created, but it requires human energy, the input of human energy to function. The egregor cannot go to the river and drink water and say, okay, now I'm charged with the element of water. Let me go forth and do my work. No, it needs human energy. And so, if that human energy is coming through crying, weeping, emotionality, anger, fear, word, whatever the case may be, that's how it will get what it needs. It needs the human to exist. You cannot just pour out libations and put out offerings for an egregor and expect it to do all the work. No, there's a part of you that needs to go into it. And the part of you that needs to go into sustaining an egregor is your attention, is your energy, is your devotion. Okay. Deities and spirit guides usually have regions and territories that they preside over. And they will work with spirit guides of other territories or regions for the benefits of groups of people. But egregores tend to be localized. And that's why you have to go to that specific place to experience the completion of a task of an egregor. So you'll find out that the egregor, let's say they'll tell you, oh, if you go over there, there's a Jesus egregor or Muslim egregor, um, that's doing healing or whatever. You have to go there. You have to do a pilgrimage and go over there. It's not coming to you. You have to go there because it is anchored there. Remember when we talked about the creation of egregores, we talked about the need to anchor the egregor. The egregor must be anchored. It must be anchored to something. It must have a physical anchor. Then it has to have a trigger word. Then it has to have tasks, a sequence for activating it. We already went through this. If you missed those classes, please go watch the classes we've been putting out over the past 2 weeks. They're very interesting and well worth your time. Okay. But a deity doesn't have to be anchored. A deity does not have to be anchored. Now, you might have a spiritual practitioner anchoring the energy of a deity in their shrine or at their altar. And that's how they tap into that deity. But the existence of that deity does not depend on that anchor. Because if you have a spiritual practitioner who knows what they're doing, they can call down the power of that deity to be operational anywhere within its territory. Okay. There are things that egregores will do to mimic what deities will do. But oftentimes you will have egregores, especially those that are out of control, even if they come and influence somebody's dreams, it is usually in a not so good, not so positive manner. Hence, you have nightmares. If a deity or spirit guide, a genuine, authentic one, wants to reach out to you, good afternoon, Winston. They just come to deliver messages about your problems. Or, yeah, like if you have a problem that you need to have solved, more often than not, a spirit guide will come and say, here's a solution to that problem. or here's what you need to know about this problem, or see a problem that is coming your way. But you will find out that when you're dealing with egregores, it's more about you're going to be punished. Somebody's in trouble. This is what I want. Give me, give me, give me, give me. Give me, give me, give me, give me. Give me this, give me that. Give me, give me, give me, give me. Give me, I want, give me, give me, give me, give me, give me. So if you're having dreams where you're having whatever it is, and it might appear in an anthropomorphic form, like in a human form, or and it's saying to you, give me, feed me, feed me, feed me, feed me, feed me, give me, give me, give me, and that's all it's doing. You're dealing with an egregore. Now, you might ask a question, well, how about neglected deities, neglected spirit guides, neglected ancestors? Sometimes they want to be fed. Yes, they do. But usually they convey that request symbolically. So, for example, you might have a situation where a spirit guide will come out and just be looking at you. An ancestor might come out in your dream and just be looking at you. But it's not going to come and terrorize you and say to you, give me something to eat now or else. They're more likely to just sit and look at you. And in the context of that dream, you will understand that, hey, my ancestors hungry, or my spirit guide, or my lineage, my animal totem is hungry. And you will sense it. You will sense. You will get the message. Words don't even have to be exchanged. You will get it in that dream that, oh, my animal totem is hungry, or my ancestor is hungry. But but that spirit guide in the dream is not going to be there going, feed me or else, feed me. If you don't feed me, why are you abandoning it? Nah. When you hear people telling you, oh, I had these dreams, or I had these visions, and in their dreams and visions, they're having people or things come with threats, always threatening, no good news, no good news. It's always, if you don't want this bad thing to happen, you must do this now. If you don't want this terrible thing to happen, you must do this now. If you don't want this to happen, give me food now. If you don't want this, you must worship me now. You must adore me now. You must obey me now. You must, egregores. You are dealing with egregores. Are we still on the same page? If we're still on the same page here, and you're picking up what I'm dropping, let's have your oh yeah in the comment section. Okay, Missy Faye already put it down on YouTube. Thank you. If you're picking up what we're dropping here, let's have your oh yeah in the comment section. So we need to understand. Okay, thank you, Winston. Thank you, John. Thank you, Demetrius. There are many of us who are working with egregores. Thank you, Scorpio. There are many of us working with egregores, and we are thinking that we're working with spirit guides, but we're not. Because remember, egregores are human construction. And you need to understand something. If a deity or a spirit guide wants you to do something, it will let you know clearly, but without threats. Thank you, Miss Mary. Thank you, Miss Allen. There are many people today who think that they're working with deities. Oh, yeah, I'm a follower of this and I'm a follower of that. My deity is this. I'm a child of this and child of that. But they're really working with egregores. There are some people, if you notice that the only time you get the solution to your problem is when you go to your spiritual practitioner's place, you're working with an egregore. When you're in your own house and you make your invocations, you make your prayers, you make your offerings and everything, and you are not getting solutions. But the only time you get solution is when you go to that spiritual practitioners. You go to your palero, palera, your santero, santera, curandisma, curandismo. That's the only time you get a solution. You're working with an egregor. You're not working with a spirit guide. You're not working with a deity. You're working with an egregor, and the egregor is anchored at your spiritual practitioner's place. And like I said earlier, you can deal with it wisely if that works for you. Because for some people, it works for them. They're like, you know what? Why should I waste my time having an altar in my house, making offerings in my house, and doing all these things in my house when I can go over there and get the solution to my problems? And that's also valid. My job is to make sure that you understand what you're doing. There are some people, they pray in their homes and nothing happens. But when they go to a certain chapels to pray, then things happen. Yeah, there are egregores up in there. And you can tap into that egregore. If you're willing to pay the price of that egregore in order to get the solution to your problem, so be it. You just have to be clear as to what you're working with and not be operating under self deception. You feel me? Okay. Working with egregores, you can work with egregores. It's just that you have to be ready for the energy that is going to be demanded from you. Your personal energy, your physical energy, your mental, your emotional energy. You just have to be ready. And if you say to yourself that I am willing to pay that price, hello, the audacity. If you're willing to say, yes, I'm willing to pay that price, then so be it. Because you're the one that knows the type of problems that you're facing, and you're the one who knows what you're willing to pay to resolve the problem that you're facing. Now, let me touch another forbidden fruit here. believe it's Miss Ife, who said, anytime I want to drop some forbidden fruit, I should ring a bell, right? Right, Miss Ife? She said, anytime I want to drop some forbidden fruit, I should ring a bell. I just remembered it now. You know, we love to have fun here. We love to have fun here. Who or what are people working with when they indulge in human offerings? Would anybody like to take a stab at that? Who or what are people working with when they make human offerings? Are they working with spirit guides? Are they working with egregores? Who or what are people working with when they make human offerings? I want to see what you think about this. I want to hear what you think about this. Remember, we're here to have us some forbidden fruit. My TikTok folks, what do you think? Okay, Scorpio says ancient. Oh my god. I am getting some interesting answers here. Okay, so Scorpio says ancient deities. Okay. Demetrius says be thirsty egregores. And then for those of you on TikTok, what do you think? And then the rest of you watching, what do you think? Demetrius, remember what I said earlier are the energy sources for egregores. Does it include the fluids? Anna saying egregores. Okay. See, if you let me help. There you go, Demetrius. So look at it this way. If let me phrase it this way so that we can think this through. If I went to, say, the middle of the desert or middle of the forest, okay, and I made an offering with fluids, and walked away. So I just made the offering, called the name of whomever, whatever I was offering it to, and walked away. That's it. I'm not putting any attention into it. I'm not making a big fanfare out of it. Would the egregor be operational, or would the spirit guide be operational? Now, Perpetua says egregores because they will do anything to get the energy they need, but they need the energy through a human being, a live human being. See what Demetrius wrote. They need attention. So, yes, you could make a fluid offering to the egregor, but if you're not staying there to pay attention to it, how is it going to feed? The strength of the egregor lies in attention, but the strength of the spirit guide lies in pure energy. The spirit guide can extract energy it needs from almost anything and anywhere, but the egregor can't. Because if the egregor could, I should be able to leave my cup of tea here and say to the egregor, hey, here's a coffee. I need $10,000 in my chicken fund account by the end of today. But the deity will come back and say, this is the kind of energy you will give me in order for me to put that $10,000 in your chicken change account. Leave the rest to me. You don't have to sit there crying, begging, fasting, doing anything to yourself. Just give me the specific thing that I need, or the specific energy form that I need, and I will play my part. And the transaction is done. But the transactions with the egregor never ends. It never ends. And so that's why when we were looking at the example of the Catholic nun who set up the Jesus Divine Mercy egregor, if you notice in the instructions, it says, you will adore me. Starting from your chapel, from your congregation, and it will keep on spreading until it gets to the Vatican and to the Pope. And the instructions for that egregor were specific. You will adore me. You will worship me. You will venerate me. That's attention. And how were people adoring and worshiping this egregor? You have the constant prayer. Remember, this nun, she was, even while she was sick with tuberculosis, she was still praying. She was still fasting. She was still in ecstasy. It's never ending. But the spirit guide is not going to say to you, okay, you must keep on feeding me every single day, every moment for me to do what I need to do. Now, are there some people who set up egregores and say, okay, we will make offerings of incense and drink and libation and all that? Yes. But one of the key features of egregores and even servitors, remember in our class on servitors, if you haven't watched that class, I think I have 2 classes on servitors. You can go to my YouTube channel and watch my class on servitors, okay? Because servitors by one person, egregores are by a group of people, and they basically are about the same thing. A servitor, when you create your servitor, you tell the servitor how you're going to reward it. And in the rewards includes attention. I will pay attention to you. I will draw the attention of others to you. I will broadcast you to others. Does that sound familiar? To those of you who work with the saints, does that sound familiar? If you do this thing for me, I will publicize you. I will announce your name. I will let others know about you. Does that sound familiar? That's one of the conditions. Thank you very much, Stacy Styles. Thank you. That's one example. Sent expedite or send expedite, depending on what language you're saying that in. St. John, St. Christopher, Virgin Mary. And those are the hallmark marks of an egregore. I will pay attention to you. I will bring others to pay attention to you. Attention is their currency. Human emotion is their currency. I can work with a spirit guide without my emotions being involved. Because if I want a spirit guide, a specific spirit guide to do something for me, I give it what it needs, the energy type that it needs to go do the work, and I go about my business. I don't have to sit there constantly paying attention to it. I will go and say, hey, I need you to put $50,000 in my chicken change account. I know that this is what you like. This is the energy source you like. Here it is. Done deal. I'm not sitting there drawing pictures of the spirit guide. I'm not there doing a live stream telling everybody about the spirit guide. I can work with the spirit guide in the privacy of my own home, my own altar, my own shrine, my own whatever. Nobody needs to know that I'm working with the spirit guide, because whatever is happening between the spirit guide and I is between us. It does not need to be publicized. But the egregore needs to be publicized. because it feeds on attention. So I need you to be equipped when you go out into the world to know who and what you're dealing with. There are some religious leaders who don't even know who and what they're dealing with. Frankly, there are some who know what they're dealing with, but they're not going to tell you. There are some egregores that are charged with, for instance, bringing people like customers, and their job is to attract people. So I could be working with an egregore, and my task to that egregore is to attract people and have them come. And whatever I tell them, they listen, they believe, and they take action on whatever I tell them to do. Okay. You have spirit guides. Spirit guides are in charge of something. Egregores are not. Egregores are task oriented. Egregores are task oriented. If you have an egregore, it performs a function. But when you have a deity, a spirit guide, they're in charge of something. So that's why you will have that's why you will have, for instance, a lineage spirit guide, an animal totem spirit guide. And the function of that animal totem is to take care of that lineage, take care of that family, take care of that shrine. That's its function. Even when you start talking about the concepts of mami wata and papi wata, what is their function? They have a river, a portion of a sea that they're in charge of. That's their domain. So, yes, they may be doing all these other things. They might be helpful. They may help you with fertility. They may help you with harvest. They may help you with fruitfulness. They may help you with productiveness. They may help you with wealth. But they're also in charge of that river, it is their territory. Egregores are not in charge of anything. So, for instance, if you look at the Jesus egregore called Divine Mercy, where is it in charge of? It's not in charge of anything. Now, it is anchored in Krakow, Poland, and similar egregores to it have been created in different places, also called the same name. But the main egregore of Jesus of Divine Mercy is anchored in Krakow, Poland. And a shrine was made out of Saint Faustina's grave. And it could be anchored there too. Or she was buried where it was anchored, however they set that thing up. But that egregore, Jesus of Divine Mercy, is not in charge of Krakow. It's not in charge of Krakow, Poland. It has a task, Divine Mercy, and it's mercy prevailing over justice. And remember, we talked about that we talked about this in that class. Now, a future class I'm going to have is going to be about more egregores like that, different kinds of egregores with their specific functions. But a deity is in charge of a territory, is in charge of an area. Thank you for sharing, Numpkins. So let's say I go to a particular river and call on the river deity there. I say, I am in your territory. I'm on your land. I want you to come and meet me because I have come to your home. Good evening, Numpkins. You see what I mean? Now, can you have egregores that do good? Because, we're saying all these things, and some of us might be sitting here going, oh my God, these egregores are terrible. Are there egregores that can do good? Yeah, there are many egregores that have been set up to do good, but they need your energy to operate. Remember, I told the story, or at least an overview of Dion Fortune. She was a great metaphysician during the Second World War, and they set up a Jesus egregor to protect the United Kingdom, actually to protect Britain during the Second World War. And you can Google this and read it up for yourself. And it took them several months to set up this Jesus egregor, whose function was to protect Britain from Germany during the Second World War. And it is said that Britain did not sustain a huge amount of damage as other places, partly because of this egregor. And if you've been to Europe, you know that Britain is not far from Germany. So, yes, were the British military, were they brave? Yes. Were the leaders gingering their people? Yes. But they also had spiritual backup. So that was a clear case of an egregor being set up to do good. But it took a lot out of Dion Fortune and her team to set up that specific Jesus egregor to protect Great Britain during the war. And they were a large group of people who came together, and this is what they determined they were going to do. They said, this is what we want to do, this is what we need to do. And there were people in that group who were master occultists, just like herself, master metaphysicians, just like herself. They had Freemasons up in there, Rosicrucians up in there, they had Kabbalists up in there. So people who knew how to create and sustain egregores. And when you look at armed conflict in Europe and the Middle East, even in Africa, let me just talk about the ones I have researched. Okay. you will find out that there is no paucity of an anecdotes on the engagement of spiritual warfare during actual military warfare. Some of you might have seen in the papers or in the news media that when Israel went after Iran, was that last month or 2 months ago? A top Iranian official said Israel used jinns. Now, of course, the Israeli government, they mocked this comment on Twitter. So, they were like, but if you notice that even though they mocked the Iranian leadership for making that statement, they didn't say it was not true. Notice that even though they made fun, they never said it was not true. So we come to understand that military conflict in some places, it is well understood that when nations engage in military conflict, it is not uncommon to employ spiritual engagement. And whoever's spiritual engagement is the more powerful wins the war. And yes, you can go Google it for yourself. Yeah, go Google it. And once that was said, and once that was said, and the Israelis mocked the guy, that was the end of the story. You notice a lot of media, they didn't carry that news. They just kind of brushed it aside and kept on moving. There are police departments that have units devoted to this kind of thing. So that if they're investigating something and they find evidence of spiritual activity, they call in the people from that unit. And the people in those units are master occultists. There are police departments that employ psychics to help them in their investigations. Okay. So, what we need to understand, what a lot of us need to understand, is that there's more to our existence that meets the eyes. Where's my okay, here it is. Now from some watermelon juice. So let's answer some questions on egregores. And if it's something I've covered in a previous class, I will refer you to the previous class. So let's take some questions on egregores. Have you had personal experience? One person had asked a question and said, I don't know if you've seen those masquerades from Togo or Benin Republic. You know, the ones that look like, when they first show them, they look like a flat mat on the ground. And then the guy will take something that looks like an idol and put under it, maybe sprinkle some alcohol on it, and the thing will stand up and start dancing or moving around. Those are egregores. Some of it is also the mechanics, okay? But a lot of that is egregores. Egregores are used extensively in places like Africa and Asia by spiritual practitioners to do perform tasks. So if you've been on Instagram, for instance, or TikTok, and you saw those videos, and they'll say, "Oh, the spiritual powers of Africa," and you see all these guys out there dancing, and then they'll get a bag and they'll spray the bag with alcohol, and the bag will stand up and become a huge masquerade and start dancing and rolling around. That's an egregore. Oftentimes, those are egregores. Um, in my mom's village, they used to have an egregore that will roam around in the night. But now it's done by human beings. But back in the day, they used to have an egregore that will come out on specific nights in the middle of the night and reveal people's hidden secrets. So if there were people in the village who were not supposed to be having an affair, this thing will come out in the middle of the night and announce it. If somebody was not the real father of somebody, this thing will come out in the middle of the night and announce it. If there was somebody who was stealing other people's stuff, this thing will come out in the middle of the night and announce it. And before it announces, it will make a now. It will make this noise. So if you're sleeping, you would wake up. It will make this loud, piercing noise, and it will go around the whole village announcing this thing. So let's say um, you had James, and I apologize to anybody watching whose name is James. I'm just like picking that out of the air. So it will come out in the night, and it will make this loud noise, "Shoo, shoo," and people wake up because there's a loud, piercing noise. And then it will say, "Hey, James is the one stealing yams from the barn of Peter. Peter, those yams you've been looking for, they were stolen by James. James, James has been stealing your yams." And when he steals your yams, he hides it in his mother's kitchen. And it will come near the house of James and make the announcement, and it will go near the house of Peter and make the announcement because it wanted to make sure that both Peter and James heard. Or it will come out and say, "James, James, that new child you have in your house you're celebrating is not your child. The real father is Peter. Peter is the real father of your son." And so usually by morning time, there was like a lot of commotion, there'll just be a lot of commotion going on because it would just reveal, or it will come out and say, "James, James, Peter has been sleeping with your second wife." Whenever you go to work in the farm, Peter comes over and sleeps with your second wife. And they usually do it in her kitchen. And it will be very, very specific. So the function of that egregore, okay, was to maintain the morality of the community. And so you would have a whole bunch of people who would not do stuff because they were like, I could be found out. And it will be announced to everybody in the village at night. And we're talking about large villages. They would announce it in the middle of the night. You know, I would say, James, Peter went to the spiritual practitioner to do some bad witchcraft against you. And they will say the nature of the bad juju they did. They would mention the name of the spiritual practitioner, where he went to go do it. They would say everything. So that egregore was used to police the community, to, keep people in check. You know, if you had people who were relatives who were intimate with each other, that egregore would announce it. And it will be screaming in the middle of the night, abomination, abomination, abomination above all abominations, abomination, abomination. And when it's screaming abomination, everybody's ears, it doesn't matter how deep a sleep you're in, you're going to wake up. It's going to be screaming, abomination, abomination. There's an abomination in the land, an abomination, abomination. And everybody's listening. And they'll say, yeah, John is sleeping with his daughter. Well, the audacity to heal says, I think we will be living in a very harmonious world if we had those egregores around everywhere. I don't know about now because people have lost shame. So people don't have the level of conscience and shame that people used to have back in the day. So people now don't care. You know what I mean? People just don't care. But back then people cared about their reputation. People now don't care about their reputation. But it used to be the funniest ish. I swear, it just used to be the funniest ish. So if you wanted to know who was having an illegal affairs with whom and who was sleeping with whom, all you had to do is on that specific, because it had specific nights it would come out. It wasn't like coming out all the time. So it had specific nights during the year it would come out and make these announcements. And usually by morning time, you would hear a lot of screaming and fighting and carrying on, because the culprits usually would be screaming, "It's not true!" Well, not in they don't scream they wouldn't be screaming in the middle of the night, but they would scream like when the fight would start during the day. Maybe John would come out and say, "What?" Maybe call out his second wife, "Ruby, you've been sleeping with John." And she's, "Not true, it's not." And so of course there'd be a lot of hoo-ha going down. There'd be a lot of hoo-ha going down. And then, everybody's like, "Oh my God." Blah, blah. You know. So in societies like that, they would create egregores to perform certain tasks like that. And so, you people became self-policing. You're like, what, I do not want to be unduly exposed, I don't want to be embarrassed, so I am not going to be doing what I'm not supposed to be doing. Okay. And even if somebody came to you and said, well, can we do this thing, you'd be like, what, I don't need to be embarrassed. And so they would not, they'll be like, not, we ain't doing this. I'm not getting involved, we ain't doing this. you know So, any questions on what we're discussing today? And like I mentioned earlier, I'm still going to be doing a series on different types of egregores. Okay. And that's going to be really interesting. We're going to be looking at different kinds of egregores that were created in the Christian church in the olden days and even in the present day. Okay. There are egregores even in the Pentecostal church. There are egregores there. You know, we have prosperity egregores. We have sacrificial egregores. We have different kinds of egregores out there. And there are people who have become so drained by these egregores. Okay. They're just people who have just become so drained. And you might be one of them. You can't move forward, you can't plan your day. You're just like, what if I do this, will I get punished? If I do this, will I be in trouble? If I do this. And remember when I was talking about some people who have that kind of relationship with Santa Muerte, and they have now tapped into an egregore of Santa Muerte. That is the fearful sort of egregore. And so all they know about Santisma Muerte, La Niña, La Flaca, all they know about her is punishment. You know, I even had someone say to me, if she's not punishing me in one way or the other, then I think something is wrong. She's not paying attention to me. Okay. And these devotees of this particular egregore attribute every problem in their life, every difficulty they face, they attribute it to La Santisma Muerte, not realizing that it is an egregore they're working with. So that's their experience. And I remember asking one person, if Santa Muerte is bringing so much trouble and tribulation and suffering to you, why do you keep on venerating it? Why do you keep on working with it? And the person's like, I don't know, I can't get away from her, and if I know if I try to put her to the side, she will punish me. That's a very difficult place to be. Frankly, that's a very, very difficult place to be. When you feel you cannot get away from something that you're venerating, it's a difficult place to be. And I said, so you, and she was like, no, you know, um, she comes to me in my dreams and is always warning me and telling me I'm not doing this, not doing that. That's not, you're not working with a deity. You're not working with a spirit guide. You're working with an egregore. So I know it's very easy for folks who are in other traditional religions to say, oh, yeah, we're in these religions and we're not Christians and these are the problems of Christians. It's not just problem of Christians. They're egregores, multiple places doing multiple things. There's even the egregore of money. There are egregores that have been formed around political parties, around flags, around most things. There's even egregores that have been formed around people, living people, especially celebrities. And people just keep on feeding these egregores. Now, another question that might happen is this. Well, thank you for the roses, Audacity. Another thing is, remember, some people were concerned about intimacy in the dream. Okay, intimacy in the dream. You know, they have their dreams and they experience intimacy. Okay, I have a video on my YouTube channel about that. Okay, and I already dealt with the psychology of it in that video. There are religious leaders who will tell you that if you are intimate in the dream, it's a terrible thing. There are spiritual practitioners who would also tell you that if you're intimate in the dream, it is a terrible thing. Oftentimes, intimacy in the dream is symbolic of something else going on. So, even though religious practitioners like to position it, they will tell you, oh, it means that someone is witchcrafting your life, or someone is, it means someone is poisoning your life, or someone, is usually blamed on someone. It is significant of a feeding, energy feeding, like energy vampirism. Okay. There are times when we have dreams of intimacy because we want to be intimate and we haven't been intimate with someone, or even if we've been intimate with somebody, we have desires of intimacy. Okay. But some people say that they notice that anytime they have dreams of intimacy, usually within a day or two, they have some bad luck, or something they're planning to do doesn't go well. Excuse me. Some people say, for instance, they want to go for a job interview. Maybe the night before they go to the job interview, or the night after they've gone to the job interview, they will have dreams of intimacy. Or maybe, they want to start something new business, or something they've worked for, and before you know it, they're experiencing failure at the edge of success, like the Pentecostal people will say. That's energy vampirism. And I have videos on energy vampires. You need to start checking your space and your aura to determine what is feeding off your energy. And even though the religious people like to blame it on a person, they'll tell you somebody. Many times it's not even a somebody. Many times it's an egregor, something that you are venerating, something that you are worshiping, something that you are adoring, something that you're paying attention to is draining you. And low love three. Okay. Oftentimes it's an egregor that you're attached to. There are some people who, for instance, are so devoted to their church leadership that it takes away their common sense. And when this happens, they are having dreams of intimacy. And in these dreams of intimacy, they cannot control themselves. And when they wake up in the morning and tell the stories of these intimate dreams, one of the things you will notice they will say is, it's just as if I couldn't control myself. These people were just doing with me what they wanted to. I was just there. I was enjoying it, but I wasn't participating, but I was enjoying it. Yeah, that's energy vampirism by an egregore. Because remember, when we are intimate, we're paying attention. When we are intimate, we are paying attention. Attention is the currency, attention is the offering to the egregore. Attention is the reward to the egregore. Attention is the payment to the egregore. There was someone I used to know who was so devoted to his church. And I think I've told the story before. His day to day was controlled by his pastor. Even when he lost his business, which was his source of livelihood, he was still devoted to his church. He would trek for miles to attend church. The pastor of his church didn't care that this guy didn't even have enough money to eat. He didn't care. All he knew is that every Sunday, this guy has to be part of my entourage. He has to be part of my security detail. Whenever the pastor was preaching, this young man had to be one of those standing in front of his pulpit while he was preaching. But never for one day did this pastor ever say to this young man, come to my home, let me give you a meal. Even though he knew the guy had lost his business, lost his source of livelihood, lost his apartment, he had to go squat, go, live with some other people, took him in. Pastor didn't care. And one time I was in their neck of the woods and I asked this young man to take me somewhere. So when he took me to where he took me to, he couldn't go for evening service. The pastor punished him with 30 days of fasting. And he did it. 30 days of fasting. And he came to tell me, he's like, Auntie, do you remember I accompanied you somewhere? I said yes. He said, okay, that day I missed Wednesday evening service. I said, okay. And he said, my pastor put me under punishment for 30 days. fasting. And in those 30 days, I am not allowed not to come to church. I must report to church every day, or else the 30-day fasting will be extended. And I asked him and I said, the pastor who imposed this thing on you, does he have a ding dong the same way you have a ding dong? And he said, and he laughed and he said, yes. So someone with a ding dong is telling you to go without food for 30 days. Is his ding dong bigger than your ding dong? Because it's sounding like my own ding dong is bigger than your ding dong. And he was laughing. But guess what? He went through with it. Did his situation improve? No. The last I heard of him about 5 years ago, he was almost on the streets. That's an egregor, feeding. And the egregor don't care about the outcome for you. The egregor is only concerned about the outcome for its creator and its user. Because the egregor that pastor created there is an egregor of control. And control to the point that people were devoid of their own common sense. The pastor would drive, and these young men, including this young man I'm talking about, would be running after the vehicle on foot. So you'd have two on one side and two on the other side. And they were running like Secret Service agents beside the SUV, huge SUV of the pastor. And these were young men that needed jobs, they needed businesses, they needed income, they needed food. And I asked him, I said, has this pastor ever fed you? And he goes, well, I said, yes or no. Has this pastor ever given you a plate of rice and said, eat? And he said, no. I said, okay, does the pastor know that you have lost your business and lost your home? He says, yes. And your pastor knows you are going through difficulty? And he says, yes. But he still requires you to fast. He still requires you to act as a security detail. Does your pastor know that you have to walk for miles? And when I say miles, we're talking about 10 miles, 7 to 10 miles to walk from where you're sharing an apartment with somebody, sharing a room with somebody. You have to walk that distance to come to the church. Is the pastor aware? He says yes. And I said, and you are still participating in this? And he started laughing. And he said, well, I don't want the pastor to feel that I'm being difficult. I don't want the pastor to think that I'm being obstinate. I don't want the pastor to think that I'm being disobedient. That's an egregor. Because remember, when I was teaching last Sunday's class, I was talking about or the one before, I was talking about the chains and hooks of the egregor. When someone is tapped into an egregor, the egregor can be so real and so effective and connected to the person's psyche that it starts influencing the person. And it doesn't influence the person in a way that is life enhancing for the person. Because why? The egregor needs energy, it needs to feed, it needs attention. The egregor doesn't care about your welfare. That's not the job of the egregor. The egregor's job is not to care for you. The job of the egregor is to accomplish the task for which its creators created it. So, in the case of this church where this guy was going to, that egregor was for control, complete submission to the pastor. Even if it was contrary to common sense, the people had to be submissive. And it was doing a good job. It was doing a fantastic job. You know? All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I need to start crack-a-lacking. Remember that we have about 4 days to our spiritual fast and cleanse retreat. If you haven't signed up for it, if you'd like more information, send me an email to contact@tochi.us. Okay. The early bird special was over on September 7th, but so you can get regular admission now. We're going to be doing rituals there. We're going to be conducting our spiritual fasts, spiritual cleansing. We're going to have divinations. If you want the VIP level of it, you will get one on one spiritual counseling with me. You will get one on one cowrie divination with me, and you will also get your personalized, I'll help you put together in writing a personalized spiritual practice for you. And you'll have it in your PDF document, and you can use it as a guide moving forward after the retreat. So that's for the VIP level. But if you just want the regular level, you can sign up for that. And we're going to be doing this for 10 days. So we're going to be fasting and cleansing for 10 days. No egregores attached. We're not going to be working with no egregores, okay? So the spiritual fast and cleanse is for your own benefit. Okay. We're not going to be calling on no egregores to do nothing. Okay, we're just going to reflect. We're going to reset. Okay, as we're going to the rest of the year, we're going to have community, answer some questions together. It's just going to be a time for, just an oasis in the middle of your busy day. Because a lot of us are just like ripping and running, just being busy, ripping and running, just being busy. And at the end of the day, we have nothing to show for all our busyness. Okay. You're welcome, Demetrius. If you enjoyed today's class, let's have your AYE in the comment section. Did you learn anything new today? And I will be posting the replay of today's class. I see it's like about 2 hours and 18 minutes. So I'm going to be posting it on YouTube. So if you want to come back later and revisit this on YouTube, it will be on YouTube for you to revisit and listen to it. Sometimes, it's good to revisit classes because the second time around, you catch things you missed the first time. I like to do that with classes. And there are sometimes I go and listen to my own class because believe you me, even as a spiritual practitioner, thank you, Nunkins. Thank you, the audacity to heal. Um, Even as a spiritual practitioner, sometimes I need to be reminded, and I need to be